Oh, hello. This is another episode of Lost in the Pond, right? Only this one's a little different because there's no editing. I am without editing software temporarily for a few days, so I needed to throw together a video that isn't edited. So it's going to be, like my other videos, just with all the crap bits kept in. So I hope you can bear with that. But this is a video about how I, a British man who'd never drunk coffee in his life, suddenly acquired the taste for it in 2013, and indeed the desire for it. Before 2013, I never saw this need for it. That need was already taken up by Red Bull, which, is not exactly the most healthy drink, but I was drinking it because I needed, obviously, that rush, that caffeine rush, in a day job I had at the time as an editor in Indianapolis. And so I was, drinking that, Dr. Pepper. I was chugging two of each a day to just stay awake, not realizing that in doing so, I was shortening the amount of time in which I'd stay alive, most likely. At least you can say that about my teeth, which were rotting away. I mean, my teeth would rot away anyway, just by virtue of the fact that I'm British. And it is a foregone conclusion from the moment of birth. Where was I? Pop ruled my life. I mean, it owned me in many ways, not in a sort of sadistic way. Well, it was sadistic. I mean, not knowingly sadistic, I suppose, although it could have been if the Coca-Cola company had statistics on me. Who knows? But I was drinking all this stuff, and sure enough, it suddenly gave me a burst of energy for an hour, and then I'd crash at the same time as my Excel spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet and I would, mourn the loss of our, I don't know what I'm talking about, and going down an avenue I didn't expect to, so forgive me. It's what happens when you've not had enough coffee, as is the case. But I've got a special guest on the show today. It's not a guest, it's just a prop. It is a steaming hot cup of coffee, so I'll just drink that. It's bloody hot. The reason I'd not really ever consumed this back in England is that firstly I was repulsed by the idea. The smell of coffee had always sort of instilled in me this sense of dread, and I don't know where it came from. I think there must have been some event that happened in my childhood that my memory is not any longer party to, that made me afraid. Not afraid is the wrong word, but just repelled by the idea of coffee. And I took that with me to the United States, subconsciously. What I didn't take with me to the United States was, weirdly for a Brit, I suppose, a love of tea. I never really cared. Just hot drinks in general were not really my thing, unless it was hot chocolate, because I have a sweet tooth. And so the reason I think that America changed this for me is that, firstly, the consumption rate of coffee in the United States is actually quite a bit higher than it is in the United Kingdom, because of the tea thing, replacing it back home. And so you were seeing all of your friends, right, and family members and colleagues drinking the stuff, and so you partly felt left out. I'm not saying that I arrived at coffee through peer pressure, although we'll get to that in a moment. I am saying that I was exposed to it in much the same way that one might have been exposed to Michael Jackson. Not like that. I'm not doing any kind of jokes about that kind of thing. Wrong celebrity. The Beatles, right? You're exposed to enough of it, and suddenly you start consuming it yourself in many ways. So in a way, it was kind of peer pressure. But again, I will get to that in a moment. But it wasn't just prevalent in drink form. I was consuming coffee, albeit on a sort of light schedule, through eating things like tiramisu, which I just wasn't accustomed to doing so back in the UK. I would say this: I think that coffee flavoured things are far more prevalent in the United States, and so I dabbled, back in the day, going to restaurants or whatever, and I saw this pudding called tiramisu and thought, that sounds exotic, and I put it in my mouth, liked it, was told it's, you know, coffee flavored, and then I started to have this sort of brainwave of, oh, so if that's what coffee tastes like, maybe I can do it. Maybe I don't need to be drinking all this rubbish at work like Red Bull and Dr. Pepper. And so one day, a work colleague of mine suggested, you know, why don't you try this cup of lovely Maxwell House, which I've come to find is not as lovely as that colleague had suggested. But I brewed myself a cup rather clumsily. You know, the first time using a coffee making machine is always going to be a struggle. But I did it and poured the coffee, put it in my mouth, because you don't really want to put coffee anywhere else on your person. Some people have tried, that woman who successfully sued McDonald's for horrific burns, but we won't get into that. Thankfully I learned about that story after my adventure into coffee. And the first thing I noticed about my first drop of good old American coffee, is Maxwell House American? Don't know. But my first drop, it was not the taste at first that I went wow to. I didn't go wow to anything. That would have been a little bit embarrassing. But I certainly went, that's creepy. Don't remember doing that. And I certainly don't want to imprint that vision in your minds either. But I was very satisfied, not by the taste, but by the feeling it gave me. The initial burst of energy that came out of me, sort of. I mean, it stayed within me, actually, that's the point. And it sustained me for more than 1 hour, like Red Bull, more like 4 hours, or at least in my mind it did. That could have just been the heat of the coffee warming up my insert body part here, you know. Don't insert a body part, that could be illegal unless you've had permission. But the coffee just woke me up, and I realized, wow, okay, this is already an advantage over soda, you know. But then after 3 or 4 of them in the same day, bear in mind I was new to this, I was catching up. I still am in many ways. 12 is my limit, but after a few of them I came to realize that, yep, the taste of this is absolutely fine. And now I've joined the ranks of millions and millions of Americans in saluting and enjoying a most marvelous hot drink. The irony is, I get a lot of my coffee from Cuba. Well, can't really see that. It's a Cafe Bustelo, because it's 1 L. My wife told me that. And it's really good, this stuff. It's very good. I don't know why that was ironic. I said there was an irony, but not really. I suppose given the previous trade embargo against Cuba and the US, there's a certain level of irony. But, oh, that's it. The irony is I came to like coffee in the US, having not liked it in England, but then purchased coffee, or rather consumed coffee that was from neither country. That's true of most coffee, isn't it, with Brazil and Colombia. I'm rambling, can you tell? But more than any of that, I think it was the American lifestyle, or at least the American working lifestyle, that told me I needed to buck up my ideas. You know, I don't think I could have thrived in the fast-paced American workplace that is sort of very big on hours but less big on vacation time, if I didn't have a caffeine source that was greater than that provided by Pepsi. I never drank Pepsi, or at least not knowingly. There is at least that consolation. The consolation is now, of course, that since I've taken coffee on, I've not touched an ounce, not even an ounce of pop since December 31st of 2013, sorry. So that's now, let me do the maths here, maths plural, 2015, 26, I'm doing my maths all wrong, 2014, 2015, 2016 and a half, if that made any sense. So that's 3.5 years without soda or pop and coffee in my life. Somebody asked the other day, you know, since doing this, have you taken on the coffee shakes? Do you shake all the time? Not all the time, you know, people might ask questions if I did that, but the coffee shakes do happen. I remember a few years ago, I was assigned a gig for the BBC actually, just live tweeting a World Cup event. I had to live tweet England's World Cup matches at the 2014 World Cup for BBC America. And I was really tired, and you have to be quite alert for this gig, right? You can't get spellings wrong. You can't do what I'm doing now. You can't keep in the crap bits, right, when you're doing that. So you have to be very, very alert. You have to get all the players' names right, you know, even the sort of the Polish ones. And so that day, I think I had something like 4 coffees just to make sure that by lunchtime I was good to go. And I got to use the word again, the irony, but it's not even irony, I suppose. But the weird thing is, I got so shaky like this, not out of nerves, you know, because this was my 3rd match at this point. The nerves were out of the window, much like my gig during World Cup matches for the BBC. Gone after this night, because my hands were shaking like this, and I couldn't even type Rooney correctly. You know, thankfully I misspelled it as Gerrard, who was a player for England, if that makes any sense. And it was almost a catastrophe. The horrible thing is, of course, about Twitter, you can't edit it. And the horrible thing about consuming 3 cups of coffee is you can't edit the reaction you have. You just have the reaction and get over it, usually by downing a number of bottles of water. So that's what I did, and I survived. Thank you.